many of my followers know a bit what I think about viruses, but I want you to explain to people who have never heard that viruses is a concept that doesn't really work scientifically. How could you explain that in a few words, why it's not working, this virology thing?
Yeah, well, I guess there's different ways to approach it. And one is, without even getting too technical, is to just look at this whole notion of contagion. Now, once upon a time, contagion just meant some sort of influence, usually a harmful influence that someone might have on another person. But with the rise of germ theory, with Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch, the word actually changed, and contagion started to mean that disease was being passed on between people through germs. Now, that's very different, because previously they just said it's some sort of influence, and they weren't specifying what that was. So that was the first corruption and the first trick that they did. They said that there was evidence that these germs were not only causing the diseases, but they were passing between people. Now, the problem with that is that there are so many human transmission experiments that they did, and they've all been covered up. And we didn't know about this, Sam and I, when we were trained as doctors. But throughout the 1800s and into the 1900s, they were trying to do this transmission, this contagion, with all sorts of diseases, not just the ones that you'd think of, like influenza and, chicken pox, measles. They were trying to do it even with the so-called sexually transmitted diseases. So they were doing experiments with gonorrhea and chlamydia, syphilis, and these experiments weren't working, and they couldn't believe it, because they were sure that if you expose one person to another and switch their fluids and their blood, that they would make each other sick, or one would make another sick. That didn't work. So that's a problem. And that's something that anyone can understand, I believe. You don't need to know a lot of technical details. And I think that's quite a good entry point for people into this discussion. And particularly, as we know, the most famous ones perhaps now were the Spanish flu experiments in 1918. For a number of reasons. One is that they said that it is so infectious that if you go anywhere near someone else with the Spanish flu, then you'll get sick. You could be passing them in the street. They could come to visit you for a cup of coffee. You could die after this. So not only contagious, but deadly. But of course, they do the experiments with the soldiers, and they try it several times. And not one case can they get in these volunteers. So that should make the alarm bells ring for anyone who's looking into this stuff for the first time, because most people will say, oh, but I remember when everyone at work got sick this week and we must have passed it around. But those anecdotal stories, that's fine, because there are plenty of anecdotal stories where that doesn't work, where one person got sick and no one did. The most important thing is that the science shows that contagion is not a thing. It is not established in the scientific literature. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is about the nature of virology itself.